Well, hello and welcome to Presenting to an Online Audience. My name is Christopher Moore and I'm the Head of Entrepreneurship and Innovation at Robert Gordon University. And throughout my 20-year career in higher education, I have delivered numerous presentations to a diverse set of audiences in various settings, both in the UK and abroad at international conferences. I presented to government ministers, CEOs, investors and students. And during that time, I built a toolbox of skills and techniques that I've used to help me deliver with confidence. Over the next 20 minutes, I want to share some of those with you because now more than ever, it's important that we understand how to engage with the audiences, particularly our audiences that aren't in the same room as us anymore, who aren't connected to us in the same way face to face, but they're now connected through the internet. And many of us would have engaged online through Microsoft Teams or Zoom or Skype in meetings. But during this lockdown period, many of us are delivering and participating in presentations online. And that brings a whole different set of challenges as we are faced with a different kind of dynamic. So to be effective and maintain that engagement, we need to make adjustments to the design and the delivery of our online presentations. And why is that? Well, it's because we need to keep an audience fully engaged. And why is that important? Well, online audiences can escape. They have the control of their video, of their audio. They can switch it on, they can switch it off. They're shrouded by that cloak of invisibility and have easy access to multiple devices that are all vying for their attention. I'm sure there's been times when you have been in a Zoom meeting and checked your Twitter feed or your Facebook pages, your messaging or your texting. And then, of course, there are lots of other distractions, the pets and family. You go and get a cup of coffee, you get some food. That job that you haven't even quite finished. So this presentation highlights key areas to consider when you are designing and delivering your online presentation to a virtual audience. We'll focus on engagement checks, preparation, delivery, follow-up, and visuals. So let's start by looking at preparation. Gina Dietrich, the author of Spin Sucks, a seminar host for the PR industry, incorporates what she calls engagement checks, where she can keep her finger on the pulse of the audience to check that they remain with us and are fully engaged throughout. We can prepare and deliver this by clever design, and there's things that you can do. One way is to prepare a worksheet to accompany the presentation that could be emailed to your audience in advance. It can include an agenda and a profile of the speaker. Worksheets are a great method to engage people. They make the listener pay close attention to what is being said. They provide a template for taking notes and capturing thoughts and can be used to reinforce those key points. They can stimulate curiosity in the subject matter prior to the event if you send it out to the audience. And they can also provide the contact details and things like web links for further information on the subject matter so that your audience can get in touch with you after the presentation's been given. So when preparing, you need to test all the technology, the webcam, the audio levels. Is your microphone working? Are your videos playing? Will they run well? Will the audio work on your videos? If you're sharing your screen or slides, you need to make sure that they work. And make sure that you're using the right browser as well. Test them on Chrome, test them on Explorer. It's really important that people are able to see them. You could have designed the best presentation in the world, but technology can let you down and it can look unprofessional. Ask a simple question: can they see you? Increase your visibility as much as possible. 90% of what we communicate is through non-verbal body language and gesturing facial expressions. Think about the lighting, think about the camera angle. If the camera angle is too low, it's not very flattering and it will get lots of chins. Too high, they won't see your full face and there'll be a shadow on it. Think about where the light's coming from and try not to cast shadows. Maybe use one of those ring lamps to light your facial area. In terms of positioning, a rule of thumb is to have a hand's width from the top of the screen to the top of your head. Don't have too much distraction in the background. Keep it simple and tidy and use a room that's not too echoey. Soft furnishing often dull the echo. Go through the house or your office and test which room is best. Do sound tests. If you need to invest in a good microphone, then do so. But the real art of good preparation is practice, practice, practice in the mirror or in front of a friendly audience that can give you some constructive feedback. Try and keep to time, and remember there may be questions and chat during the presentation, but I'll come to that a little bit later. Having done your preparation, you come to the day of the presentation. Think about how you're going to start. I would usually introduce myself and then set some expectations. Say how long the presentation is going to be, how long it's going to last, and what the format will be. You should say whether or not the presentation will be recorded. It's good etiquette to inform people whether it is going to be recorded so that they know. You'll also need to think about how you're going to handle questions or the online chat. Again, you should inform your online audience how this is going to work. For many participants, the chat and question function is a key part of an online presentation. It's a great way for your audience to feel engaged and provides that kind of live interactive feel to it. But what is the process for answering? One technique is to have a colleague on hand to answer the questions as they come in. This will ensure that you yourself don't get distracted while you're delivering the presentation. It also maintains that live feel to the presentation by handling those questions in real time. As I've already mentioned, body language is vitally important when your audience isn't in the same room as you. So you may want to consider standing up when presenting. Posture influences how your voice projects. Ask any professional singer. Our bodies are full of tubes and bends, and the air has to navigate through them to get out of our mouths when we speak. When we stand upright, we create better flow of air from our lungs, which are at full capacity, and this helps us to create a strong, resonant sound. But there are many ways to use your voice effectively when presenting online or face-to-face. Here's Julian Treasure with a few more helpful tips.
You have an amazing toolbox. This instrument is incredible, and yet this is a toolbox that very few people have ever opened. I'd like to have a little rummage in there with you now and just pull a few tools out that you might like to take away and play with, which will increase the power of your speaking. Register, for example. Now, falsetto register may not be very useful most of the time, but there's a register in between. I'm not going to get very technical about this for any of you who are voice coaches. You can locate your voice, however. So if I talk up here in my nose, you can hear the difference. If I go down here in my throat, which is where most of us speak from most of the time, but if you want weight, you need to go down here to the chest. You hear the difference? We vote for politicians with lower voices. It's true, because we associate depth with power and with authority. That's register. And we have timbre. It's the way your voice feels. Again, the research shows that we prefer voices which are rich, smooth, warm, like hot chocolate. Then prosody. I love prosody. This is the sing-song, the meta-language that we use in order to impart meaning. It's route one for meaning in conversation. People who speak all on one note are really quite hard to listen to if they don't have any prosody at all. That's where the word monotonic comes from, or monotonous, monotone. Also, we have repetitive prosody now coming in, where every sentence ends as if it were a question, when it's actually not a question, it's a statement. Pace. I can get very, very excited by saying something really, really quickly, or I can slow right down to emphasize. And at the end of that, of course, is our old friend, silence. Can be very powerful. Of course, pitch often goes along with pace to indicate arousal, but you can do it just with pitch. Where did you leave my keys? Where did you leave my keys? It's a slightly different meaning in those two deliveries. And finally, volume. I can get really excited by using volume, sorry about that if I startled anybody, or I can have you really pay attention by getting very quiet.
Another very simple tip is to do some voice exercises before you go and do your presentation. Have a glass of water close to hand because you often get a dry throat, which is one of the physical reactions to anxiety or nervousness. So a small glass of water or juice is ideal, but make sure you keep it well away from your computer so there's no chance of you spilling it. Earlier, I mentioned engagement checks. How can we ensure that the audience is coming on that journey with you? How do we know that they're not checking their Facebook page or off making coffee? There are a number of tactics we can implement to ensure that your audience remain engaged throughout your online presentation. One that I've already spoken about is to enable the chat function. The majority of participants like this function, and you can have colleagues answering the questions. Encourage participants to have dialogue on it and create time in your presentation to make that happen. Another engagement tool is the use of social media like Twitter. You could have a Twitter hashtag at the bottom of each slide and encourage interaction throughout the presentation. I've actually read of a presenter having their phone on vibrate in their pocket so that they can measure the level of tweets and interactions during their presentation. The workbook builds interaction throughout the presentation as well. It's a really good way to ensure that your audiences are following you. I've also seen the use of polls being used effectively during presentations through apps such as Mentimeter. You can poll your audience, you can check their understanding, and it's also fun. You can have quiz and create nice graphics. And in Zoom, you can use breakout rooms effectively to put the audience into smaller groups to discuss different subject matters. This can be facilitated by the presenter who can go into the groups. But a word of warning, this does give your audience an opportunity to leave the session, and I've actually seen a 25% drop off when moving people into breakout rooms. They've just left the session. I do think they work well for people who want to network and have an expectation that it's actually going to happen prior to joining the session. So one key area that you need to consider when doing an online presentation is visuals, a key part of any presentation, but it's even more crucial when your audience isn't in the same room and they're online. Visuals need to reinforce those main points of the presentation, and there are 3 priorities that you need to consider. When reinforcing key points, don't mistake silence for understanding. You may like to prepare a summary slide that focuses in on those 3 or 4 key points that you're trying to get across during your presentation. The second point is to try and activate the audience's limbic system. That's the part of the brain that's sensitive to movement, but small amounts of movement. Don't make them random or chaotic, but just small movements that can draw the audience's attention to the areas of the visuals or the slides of the presentation that you want them to. And finally, keep it simple. Less is more when presenting virtually. You often won't have an idea what size of screen your viewers are watching you on. They may have a smartphone or a tablet, so it's really important to keep your visuals and graphics simple and crisp, so it's legible and easy to understand. Good fonts to use are Helvetica or Calibri. A good size of fonts could be anywhere between 26 and 30. The rule of 3 is often one that I use, highlighting 3 main points per slide. And use images. The old axiom of a picture paints 1,000 words holds true here and can be really powerful in your visuals. It's really important that you start and finish on time. Participants may have other meetings to go to. At the end of your presentation, I would thank everybody for coming and maybe consider a call to action. Tell them where they can get more information or where they can contact you. Ask for them to comment or give some feedback. This can be done again through the chat function or direct to you by email or using that Twitter hashtag that you have provided on your slides. I would often then follow up with an email thanking them for attending the presentation and maybe inviting them to further presentations or your next webinar. At the end of your online presentation, make sure everyone has left the platform you're using. Give clear instructions to how they can navigate away from the session, whether you're on Teams or Zoom. And by no means speak about the session or audience members while you're still online, because others may be able to hear you. You have to remain professional and authentic at all times, prior to, during, and after the session has been complete. I don't know about you, but I've certainly seen a number of recent disasters online, which remind us to be ourselves and professional in our surroundings. But most importantly, make it an experience that participants will enjoy and remember. Make it engaging. Think about your audience and think about the whole experience, not just during the presentation, but before and after it too. How can you curate the whole package to focus on engagement and enjoyment beyond just what's the online session? So I hope you've enjoyed this short session and have a number of key takeaways from it. Here's my summary slide. thank you for listening to my presentation. And remember, when designing and delivering your online presentation, be authentic, stay professional, have fun with it, and good luck.